You're too poor to be here." Those words still ring in my ears, sharp as glass, echoing across the quiet first-class cabin like a gavel slammed in judgment. I had just lowered myself into the wide leather seat of 1A, stretching my legs out, enjoying that rare luxury after weeks of exhausting travel. The smell of fresh coffee drifted from the galley, and for a moment everything seemed calm. But then the silence was split in two by a woman standing in the aisle, her finger aimed squarely at me like a weapon. "Before we dive in, comment which country you're watching from, because this isn't just another airplane story. It's one that ended with the gate agent ordering, 'Escort the pilot.'" That morning had begun like any other travel day. I had driven to the airport in the soft gray light, my suitcase rattling behind me as I cut through the crowds. Security was slow but uneventful, the scent of cologne and coffee shops blending with the faint tang of disinfectant. I stopped for a sandwich I barely tasted, my mind already wandering toward the flight ahead. The thought of sinking into first class, of finally breathing after days of back-to-back meetings, felt like a reward earned. I didn't expect trouble, much less a storm that would make the entire cabin pause. She looked every inch the type people whisper about, the HOA Karen. Stereotype made flesh, a navy blue blazer tailored to perfection, pearls gleaming under the cabin lights, hair sprayed into place so tightly it didn't move when she leaned forward. Her tote bag was crammed with files and folders like she had brought her entire neighborhood board meeting on board. She blocked the aisle with a kind of authority you couldn't buy with a ticket, her voice pitched high so every row could hear. "That's my seat. Get up, not a request, a demand." I blinked, caught off guard, then pulled my boarding pass from the pocket of my jacket. The paper was still warm against my hand. "Ma'am, this is 1A. My ticket says it right here." I tried to keep my voice level, calm even though my pulse was beginning to climb. The flight attendant, her bun tight and uniform pressed, paused with her service list and stepped closer. Passengers in the rows behind craned their necks, earbuds pulled out, eyes flicking between us like an audience settling into a show. The cabin smelled of stale coffee and leather polish, but underneath it all was the unmistakable scent of tension. The woman scoffed and slapped her tote bag onto the armrest like a flag-staking territory. "Don't lie. People like you don't sit here. I've flown this route for years, and I always get 1A. She said it like first-class seats were her birthright, like I had wandered into her living room by mistake. The businessman in 1B shifted uncomfortably, pulling his newspaper higher as if to shield himself. I felt heat rising in my face, a mix of anger and humiliation, but I held the ticket steady in front of me. The flight attendant leaned closer, comparing both passes. "Sir's boarding pass says 1A, she announced softly. Then turning to the woman, "Ma'am, yours says 1C. The verdict was clear. But instead of stepping back, the woman's face hardened. Her voice rose, sharp and brittle. "No, he must have switched tickets with someone. Or forged it. Look at him. Do you really think he belongs in first class?" The words struck me like a slap, not just because of the arrogance, but because of the implication. The murmur of passengers swelled, whispers spreading, the glow of a phone screen rising as someone began recording. I sat frozen, gripping the armrest, wondering how far she would push. The flight attendant's hand went to her walkie-talkie. Her voice clipped as she requested backup. The static hiss filled the air. Then a phrase cut through that made the entire row pause. "Gate agent to the front. Escort the pilot." The words landed like thunder, and every pair of eyes turned to me. At first, the woman didn't understand. She stood there, blinking, lips parted as though the phrase hadn't been meant for her ears. Then her expression snapped back into steel. "Escort the pilot?" she repeated, voice high and incredulous. "What does that have to do with this seat thief?" Passengers shifted forward now, some holding phones at chest level, others whispering openly. The man in 1B lowered his paper and looked at me with dawning realization. My throat tightened, but I didn't move. I hadn't wanted anyone to know. To them, I was just another passenger, another tired man sinking into the comfort of first class. That anonymity had been deliberate. Pilots don't usually travel in uniform when we're off duty, and I had chosen to keep it quiet. I wanted rest, not attention, but now, with every passing second, the truth edged closer. The irony struck me. She thought I didn't belong in 1A, when in reality the plane couldn't leave without me. The gate agent arrived with brisk authority, clipboard in hand, suit jacket swinging as she moved down the aisle. "What seems to be the problem here?" she asked, scanning the flight attendant. The woman, then me. The woman jumped in, her voice rising like she was leading a rally. "This man is pretending to have my seat. He doesn't belong in first class. I sit here every time I fly, and I know the crew on this route." Her finger jabbed toward me, sharp enough to cut. Around us, murmurs grew into gasps. Someone whispered, "Is she serious?" The gate agent took both boarding passes, eyes flicking quickly from the paper to the passenger list on her clipboard. A flicker of recognition crossed her face when her gaze met mine. She adjusted her stance, squared her shoulders, and announced clearly, "Ma'am, your ticket is for 1C. This gentleman is in his correct seat." It should have ended there, but entitlement rarely bows to reason. The woman raised her chin and snapped, "No, he's lying. I don't care what that paper says. He doesn't belong here. Make him leave." Gasps rippled through the cabin. A teenager 3 rows back whispered, "Oh, she's done for," while holding his phone up higher. The gate agent's eyes hardened, her voice cutting clean through the noise. "Escort the pilot." The phrase dropped like a hammer. Silence followed. The kind of silence that feels alive, buzzing with shock. The woman's face went pale, her mouth opening and closing without sound. She stumbled a step back, clutching her tote bag, as realization began to crack her mask of authority. The flight attendant stepped toward me, her tone shifting from neutral professionalism to crisp respect. "Captain, if you'll follow me." That single word, "Captain," sent the cabin into uproar. Gasps, mutters, someone even clapped softly before being shushed. Heads swiveled to look at me as though I had transformed in front of their eyes. I straightened, nodded once, but inside, my stomach churned. I had wanted to be invisible, but the truth was no longer mine to hide. The woman's face twisted in disbelief. No, you're not. You can't be the pilot. You're just pretending." Her voice shook now, teetering between denial and panic. The gate agent's tone was colder this time. "Ma'am, you accused the captain of fraud in front of witnesses. Do you realize how serious that is?" The words struck her harder than any retort I could have offered. She looked around, desperate for support, but found only phones filming her downfall and eyes filled with judgment. When the truth finally landed, the atmosphere in the cabin flipped. Where there had been whispers and suspicion, now there was admiration. Even pity directed at me for being put through the ordeal. The businessman in 1B gave a small nod of respect. A woman across the aisle mouthed, "Good for you." The woman in the blazer, however, seemed to shrink by the second. Her pearls no longer glimmered with authority. They looked like chains weighing her down. The gate agent folded her arms, her voice stern. "Ma'am, you've caused a disturbance, delayed boarding, and made false accusations against a pilot. That's a violation of airline policy. Security will escort you off this flight." Gasps scattered across the rows, followed by low murmurs of agreement. The woman stammered, her voice breaking. No, this is a misunderstanding. I've been flying for years. I know people. I always sit here." Her pleas were desperate now, stripped of the arrogance she had entered with. 2 uniformed security officers boarded swiftly, boots thudding against the narrow aisle. Their presence was heavy, commanding immediate silence. They listened briefly as the gate agent recounted the situation, then turned to the woman. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us." Her eyes widened in shock, then desperation. "You can't do this to me. I'm a loyal customer. I have miles. I have status." But her words bounced off the officer's calm expressions. Passengers shifted aside as they reached for her tote bag. She clutched it to her chest like it was a lifeline, eyes darting for sympathy. But all she found were cameras, judgment, and the crushing weight of accountability. As the officers guided her down the aisle, her heels clicking against the floor, whispers turned into murmurs of justice. Someone muttered, "Karma," and laughter followed. By the time she disappeared past the door, the cabin exhaled as one. The tension, the hostility, evaporated into relief. The flight attendant returned, leaning slightly toward me with a respectful smile. "I'm sorry about that, Captain. She won't be joining us." I nodded, the weight in my chest easing. The cabin seemed lighter now, filled with quiet conversations, and the muted shuffle of passengers finally settling in. My seat, once the focus of humiliation, was now a symbol of something else entirely. That truth doesn't bend to arrogance, and authority can't be stolen by shouting. As the engines roared to life and the plane prepared for takeoff, I leaned back and let the hum of the cabin wash over me. I hadn't wanted to be seen that day, but maybe it was better that I was, because the lesson was clear for everyone watching. Authority isn't about entitlement, it's about trust, and trust once broken can't be rebuilt with arrogance. So if you believe justice was served, hit that like button, share this story, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Because in the end, arrogance may shout the loudest, but truth always speaks last.